Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Hope you're all doing amazing today. In this video, we're diving into the latest updates about Kelly Ripa and Mark Consuelos. You don't want to miss this. So make sure to stay tuned till the end, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button. The morning light spilled softly through the tall windows of Mark Consuelos and Kelly Ripa's Manhattan apartment, illuminating a space that had always felt filled with laughter, love, and unstoppable energy. But that morning was different. The usual aroma of freshly brewed coffee, the cheerful chatter from the kitchen, and the familiar sound of Kelly humming to herself were all there, yet beneath it, there was a quiet tension. Something had shifted. Mark sat by the window, his phone still in his hand, the glow of the screen fading as he stared blankly into space. He had just read the message from his doctor, a message that would leave anyone frozen in disbelief. The words "abnormal test results" seemed to echo in his mind like a drumbeat, heavy and relentless. For a moment, he couldn't breathe. The world felt smaller, tighter, like the walls themselves were closing in. For years, Mark had been the image of vitality, the charismatic co-host on Live with Kelly and Mark, the devoted husband, the proud father, the actor with a commanding presence and a contagious smile. But now, in that quiet moment, all those roles blurred together. He wasn't the celebrity people watched every morning. He was just a man, scared, uncertain, and facing something that no fame or fortune could protect him from. Kelly noticed almost instantly that something was wrong. "Mark, what is it?" she asked softly, her voice trembling as she approached him. When he didn't answer, she reached out, touching his shoulder gently. He turned to her, eyes glistening, and handed her the phone. She read the message, and her face went pale. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Words felt too fragile for what they were feeling. Finally, Mark whispered, "I didn't expect this. I thought it was just a routine checkup." Kelly took his hand, squeezing it as tears welled in her eyes. "We don't know what it means yet. We'll figure it out, okay? We always do." But even as she said it, she could see the fear in his expression, and it broke her heart. The days that followed were a blur of doctor appointments, tests, and sleepless nights. They tried to keep things normal for their children, maintaining smiles at breakfast, jokes on set, and the illusion that everything was fine. Yet, behind the cameras and cheerful small talk, a different reality was unfolding. Every phone call made Mark's heart race. Every waiting room felt like a battlefield. One evening, after a particularly long day, Mark and Kelly sat on their balcony, the city lights flickering below them. The cool breeze carried the faint sounds of traffic and laughter from the streets, the kind of ordinary city life that felt almost comforting in its predictability. Mark sighed, staring out at the skyline. "You know, I've spent my whole life planning, thinking about what's next, what project, what show, what goal. But now, I can't think past tomorrow." Kelly turned to him, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Maybe that's the point," she said gently. "Maybe this is the universe's way of reminding us to slow down, to live in the moment." He smiled faintly, the corners of his eyes crinkling as he nodded. "I just wish it didn't take something like this to make me see it." A few weeks later, the results finally came in. The doctors explained that while the illness was serious, it was manageable, but only if Mark committed to lifestyle changes, treatment, and constant monitoring. It wasn't a death sentence, but it was a wake-up call. Hearing the full diagnosis felt like both a punch to the gut and a strange kind of relief. The unknown was always worse than the truth, no matter how difficult the truth was. Mark sat quietly as the doctor explained everything, holding Kelly's hand the entire time. When the doctor left the room, the two just sat there, silent, absorbing what this new chapter meant for them. After a long pause, Kelly whispered, "We can handle this." Mark looked at her, emotion thick in his voice. "You always believe in me, even when I don't believe in myself." That night, back home, he found himself looking through old family photos, moments frozen in time, birthdays, vacations, holidays, red carpets. But one photo, in particular, caught his eye. It was a candid shot of him and Kelly laughing uncontrollably during a beach trip years ago. They weren't posing, weren't performing. They were just being. He smiled at the memory, tears slipping down his cheeks. "I don't ever want to forget how that feels," he whispered to himself. The next morning on Live, the audience noticed that Mark seemed different. Not somber, exactly, but more grounded, more present. When he and Kelly shared their usual banter, there was an extra layer of tenderness between them, a quiet understanding. The viewers didn't know what had happened, but they felt something shift. Later in the show, when the topic turned to health and self-care, Mark paused for a moment before speaking. "You know," he began, "we all think we're invincible, that we can just push through anything, work harder, ignore the signs our body gives us. But sometimes life has a way of stopping us in our tracks. And when that happens, you realize what really matters." Kelly reached over, placing her hand on his arm. "And what matters is being here," she added softly, "being present." The audience applauded, unaware of how deeply personal those words were. In the weeks that followed, Mark embraced his recovery journey with a renewed sense of purpose. He changed his diet, began meditating, and started journaling about gratitude, something Kelly encouraged him to do each morning. The process wasn't easy. There were days of frustration, fear, and exhaustion. But there were also moments of clarity, simple joys he had once overlooked. Morning walks with Kelly, quiet evenings watching the sunset, laughter over dinner with their kids. He also became an advocate for regular health checkups, using his platform to remind fans that strength isn't about ignoring pain, it's about facing it. His vulnerability inspired thousands, and messages poured in from viewers sharing their own battles and recoveries. One night, as they prepared for bed, Kelly looked at him and said, "You know, I've never been prouder of you than I am right now." Mark smiled, his eyes glistening. "I'm proud too," he replied, "not because of what I've done, but because I finally understand what it means to live." And as they turned off the lights, the city humming softly outside, there was peace, not because everything was perfect, but because they were together, facing it all hand in hand. In the end, Mark's shocking illness results didn't just change his health, they transformed his perspective. They stripped away the noise of fame and success and brought him back to what mattered most: love, family, and gratitude. Because sometimes the hardest news becomes the greatest teacher, and in Mark Consuelos' case, it reminded him that life, even in its most uncertain moments, is still something beautiful to hold on to. The months that followed became a slow, powerful rebirth for Mark Consuelos. The shock that had once paralyzed him had transformed into something unexpected, a quiet resilience. He began to see every sunrise differently. Each day felt less like a routine and more like a gift. He still had moments of doubt, mornings when fear crept in uninvited, whispering worst-case scenarios. But Kelly was always there. She had become his anchor, her calm voice cutting through the fog of uncertainty. She joined him in meditation sessions, cooked healthy meals alongside him, and sometimes just sat with him in silence when words weren't enough. On one of those evenings, Mark looked at her and said softly, "You know, Kel, I think I understand now why people call illness a teacher. It strips you down until only the truth is left." Kelly smiled faintly, resting her head on his shoulder. "And what's the truth?" "That love is all that really matters," he said after a long pause. "Everything else is just noise." That truth began to shape everything he did. When Mark returned to live with Kelly and Mark, after taking a short break, the energy on set was different. He wasn't just there to entertain, he was there to connect. His usual charm was still there, but now it was infused with vulnerability, something the audience could feel instantly. He started sharing pieces of his journey, not the details of his diagnosis, but the emotions, the lessons, the gratitude. Viewers found comfort in his words. The man who had once seemed larger than life was suddenly so human, so relatable. Letters poured in from people who said his honesty gave them courage to face their own struggles. One letter in particular stayed with him. It was from a middle-aged woman named Claire, who wrote that she had been avoiding her own medical tests for years out of fear. After hearing Mark talk about confronting his illness, she finally went, and the early detection saved her life. Mark read the letter aloud to Kelly, his voice cracking halfway through. "If that's the only thing that comes out of this," he whispered, "then maybe it was all worth it." Kelly squeezed his hand. "You've already changed lives, Mark, and you don't even realize it." Stay tuned for all the updates about Kelly Ripa. We are the first to publish all the information about Kelly Ripa and Mark Consuelos, so stay with us to get all the latest updates. And stay tuned to our USA Daily Drop for all updates.